You pick up your plate, carry it to the table on the other side of the room, and you have just changed countries. You didn't leave the building. You didn't even leave the room. But a thin, white line runs across the floor, set into the tiles. And on one side of it, you're in Belgium, and on the other, you're in the Netherlands. There is a town where this is just normal, where the border between two nations doesn't run neatly around the edge of town. It runs straight through the middle of it, through gardens, through shops, through living rooms, even, in one famous case, straight through a family's front door. This is Baarle, a single town that is somehow two towns in two different countries, folded into each other like puzzle pieces that never quite fit. And to understand how it got this way, we have to go back more than 800 years. About an hour south of Rotterdam, near the line where the Netherlands meets Belgium, there's a town of a few thousand people. Except it isn't one town, it's two. One of them is Dutch. It's called Baarle-Nassau. The other is Belgian, and it's called Baarle-Hertog. They share the same streets, the same square, the same bakeries, and yet they are governed by two different countries, with two town halls, two mayors, two police forces, two of almost everything. If you stood in the central square and looked around, you would have no idea you were standing on an international border. There's no fence, no checkpoint, no guards. Just an ordinary Dutch-Belgian town going about its day. But look down at the pavement, and you'll start to see them. Little white crosses set into the cobblestones, with the letters NL on one side and B on the other. Those crosses are the border, and they go everywhere. Here's where it stops being a quaint quirk and starts being one of the most complicated borders on the entire planet. The Belgian town, Baarle-Hertog, is not one piece of land. It's scattered across the Dutch countryside in 22 separate fragments, little islands of Belgium completely surrounded by the Netherlands. But it gets stranger, because inside some of those little islands of Belgium, there are even smaller islands of the Netherlands. 7 Dutch parcels of land sitting inside the Belgian fragments, which themselves sit inside the Netherlands. Countries inside countries inside countries. A piece of the Netherlands surrounded by a piece of Belgium surrounded by the Netherlands again. When you draw it on a map, it doesn't look like a border at all. It looks like someone shattered a plate and glued the pieces back together in the wrong order. There are around 30 separate pieces in total, which makes Baarle, by some measures, the most complex international border in the world. Now remember, these borders were drawn long before the houses were. So the lines don't politely go around buildings, they go straight through them. There are homes in Baarle where your kitchen is in Belgium and your bedroom is in the Netherlands. Shops where one till is in one country and another till is in the other. And the town has a beautifully simple rule for deciding which country a divided house actually belongs to. It's wherever the front door is. That one rule has real consequences. Your front door decides your address, your nationality on paper, and, crucially, which country's taxes you pay. So houses that sit right on the line sometimes carry 2 different house numbers, one for each country, each with its own little national flag beside it, so the postman knows which nation he's delivering to. And because the front door is the deciding factor, there are stories in Baarle of people doing something wonderfully absurd. When the tax rules were better on one side, families would simply rebuild their front door, moving it a few feet across the line to switch which country they lived in. You didn't have to move house, you just had to move the door. Living on a border like this turns ordinary life into a gentle comedy. For a long time, the two countries had different rules about all sorts of things. Shop opening hours, closing times for restaurants, what you could sell and when. And the people of Baarle, being practical, learned to use the line. There are well-told local stories of restaurants sitting right on the border. When the law said the Dutch side had to close for the night, diners would simply pick up and shuffle over to the tables on the Belgian side, where the evening could carry on a little longer. The border didn't divide the town so much as the town learned to dance around it. More recently, when the two countries had different lockdown rules, a shop split by the border could find one half ordered shut, while the other half, a few feet away in the other country, was allowed to stay open. Two postal systems, two electricity standards once upon a time, two sets of laws running through the same streets, the same buildings, sometimes the same rooms, and somehow a town that just quietly gets on with it. But none of this was planned. Nobody designed Baarle. It's the frozen leftover of an argument from the Middle Ages. To find the cause, you have to go back to the year 1198. Back then, this wasn't Belgium and the Netherlands. Those countries didn't exist yet. This was the frontier between two medieval powers, the Duke of Brabant and the Lord of Breda, from the house that would later be called Nassau. And the way they divided up the land around Baarle was not by drawing a clean line on a map. It was by dividing it the medieval way, plot by plot. Roughly speaking, the cultivated farmland and certain holdings went to the Duke, that's the Hertog, the Belgian half, while other parcels went to Breda and Nassau, the Dutch half. The result was a patchwork of ownership scattered across the countryside, defined not by geography, but by who held the deed to each individual field. For centuries, it didn't much matter. It was all just one fuzzy frontier. But then modern nations formed, and someone had to decide exactly where Belgium ended and the Netherlands began. And that's when the medieval mess became an international one. In 1843, the two young countries signed a treaty to settle their border, the Treaty of Maastricht. Along almost its entire length, they simply drew a line. But when the surveyors reached Baarle, they found that medieval patchwork of plots and gave up trying to simplify it. Instead, they did something extraordinary. They went field by field. The treaty assigned the nationality of more than 5,700 individual parcels of land, each one handed to Belgium or the Netherlands based on who had historically owned it. Between two particular border markers, numbered 214 and 215, the treaty didn't produce a line at all. It produced a mosaic. The enclaves you can walk through today are, quite literally, a list of medieval landholdings made solid. And here's my favorite part. Even in 1843, they couldn't finish. A few plots were too disputed to assign, and they were simply left. One stubborn parcel, known as H22, belonged to neither country for another century and a half. It was only in 1995, within living memory, that surveyors finally settled it, handing that last scrap to Belgium and making the country about 2,600 square meters larger. The border of Baarle wasn't truly finished being drawn until the age of the internet. We tend to think of borders as solid, ancient, almost natural things. Bold lines on a map, the way the world has always been. Baarle is a reminder that they're nothing of the sort. They're human decisions, old paperwork, deals between long-dead dukes, frozen into the floor of a café where someone is, right now, sipping coffee with one foot in each country. It's a town that should, by every logic, be impossible to run. And yet the people of Baarle have done it for centuries, not by erasing the line, but by living gracefully across it. Maybe that's the real lesson hiding in those little white crosses in the street. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe, because next time on Margins of the Map, we go to the exact opposite of Baarle, a piece of land that everyone's tangled border missed, the only place on Earth that no country wants to claim at all. Thanks for watching.